The
You look
fluorescent lights
beautiful
of
tonight.
Henderson and
I feel
Associates
so
had never
special with
felt
you.
colder than they did that Tuesday morning when Marcus Chen realized his world was about to collapse. His phone buzzed with the school's number for the third time that week. His 6-year-old daughter Lily had a fever again, and across the glass-walled conference room, Victoria Henderson's ice-blue eyes were already narrowing in his direction. He'd seen that look before. It meant consequences. It meant another lecture about commitment and professionalism. It meant she'd never understand that some things mattered more than quarterly reports, no matter how much he needed this job. Marcus had been juggling single fatherhood and his career as a senior analyst for 18 months now, ever since Sarah's accident. The drunk driver had taken his wife, his partner, his co-pilot in this chaotic adventure called parenthood. Now it was just him and Lily against the world, and lately, it felt like Victoria Henderson had declared war on them both. "Chen, my office. Now." Victoria's voice cut through the morning chatter like a blade through silk. She didn't wait for his response, already striding toward her corner office in those impossibly sharp heels that clicked against the marble floor like a countdown timer. Marcus glanced at his phone. The school nurse could wait 5 minutes. Maybe. He grabbed his tablet and followed his boss, feeling the curious stares of his colleagues burning into his back. Everyone knew about his situation. Everyone also knew that Victoria Henderson, youngest CEO in the firm's 40-year history, had built her empire on steel and spreadsheets, not sympathy and sentiment. Her office was exactly what you'd expect: minimalist, monochrome, immaculate. Not a single personal photo, not a splash of color anywhere. Victoria stood behind her desk, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "This is the 4th time this month you've requested early departure," she said without preamble. "The Morrison account presentation is in 3 days, and your section is incomplete." "Ms. Henderson, I can explain. I don't want explanations, Chen. I want results. I want an employee who prioritizes this company." Her voice was crisp, controlled, but something flickered in those cold eyes. "When I hired you, you were hungry. Dedicated. Now you're just distracted." The word hit him like a slap. Distracted. As if Lily was merely a distraction, some hobby he'd picked up that interfered with the real business of living. "My daughter is sick," Marcus said, fighting to keep his voice steady. "She's 6 years old, and she's been running a fever for 2 days. The school nurse has parents calling in constantly. I'm sure she can manage." Victoria moved to her window, gazing down at the city below. "You knew this position demanded complete dedication when you accepted it." Something inside Marcus snapped. 18 months of grief, exhaustion, and holding everything together while the world expected him to function like nothing had changed, it all came rushing to the surface. Complete dedication. He stepped forward, his tablet clattering onto her desk. "I've given you complete dedication. I've worked from hospital waiting rooms. I've finished reports at 3 a.m. after finally getting my daughter to sleep. I've missed her school plays and parent-teacher conferences because you needed something done, urgently. And you know what? She never complains. She never asks why daddy can't be there. Because she's 6, and she's already learned that the world doesn't stop just because her mother died." The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria turned slowly, her face unreadable, but her hands had tightened into fists at her sides. "Don't you dare bring your personal tragedy into this office's emotional manipulation," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Do you think you're the only person who's ever suffered? The only one who's had to make sacrifices? I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for basic human compassion. Compassion doesn't close deals, Chen. Compassion doesn't keep this company afloat. Compassion is a luxury neither of us can afford." They stood there, barely 6 feet apart, the air between them crackling with tension. Marcus could see his career dissolving before his eyes, but he couldn't stop. "Then maybe I'm working for the wrong person," he said quietly. "Because I refuse to become someone who thinks compassion is a luxury. I refuse to teach my daughter that success means abandoning everything that makes us human." Victoria's jaw clenched. She moved toward him, and for a moment, Marcus thought she might actually throw him out herself. But instead, something extraordinary happened. She stopped inches from his face, her eyes blazing with an emotion he'd never seen there before, not anger, not contempt, but something raw and painful and achingly vulnerable. And then, in a movement that defied all logic and everything he thought he knew about Victoria Henderson, she grabbed the front of his shirt and kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't romantic. It was desperate and fierce and tasted like tears he hadn't realized she was crying. When she pulled back, her carefully constructed mask had shattered completely. "My daughter would have been 7, she whispered, her voice breaking on words that seemed to cost her everything. "She would have been 7 this month. And I wasn't there when she needed me because I was closing a deal in Singapore. I wasn't there when the leukemia came back. I wasn't there when she asked for me at the end because I was building this empire, and I told myself it was for her future. But she didn't have a future." Marcus stood frozen, watching this woman he'd thought was made of ice dissolve into someone he'd never imagined existed beneath the surface. "Her name was Emma," Victoria continued, sinking into her chair as if her legs could no longer support her. "And every time I see you fighting to be there for your daughter, every time you choose her over this job, I hate you. Because I never had your courage. I never made that choice, and now it's too late." The anger drained out of Marcus, replaced by a profound understanding that punched through his chest. He knelt beside her chair, no longer employee and boss, just two broken people who'd lost everything. "It's not about courage," he said softly. "It's about survival. I'm terrified every single day that I'm failing her. That I'm not enough. That she deserves better than a father who's constantly torn between keeping a roof over her head and being present in her life." Victoria looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time. "You're there. That's what matters. You're there." They sat in that office for a long time, sharing stories they'd both kept locked away. Victoria talked about Emma, her laugh, her obsession with butterflies, the way she'd believed her mother could do anything. Marcus talked about Lily, about teaching himself to braid hair through YouTube videos, about the night she'd asked if mommy was happy in heaven and he'd cried so hard he couldn't breathe. When Marcus finally left Victoria's office 2 hours later, he carried a new arrangement, flexible hours, work from home options when needed, and a promotion that would ease the financial pressure that kept him awake at night. But more than that, he carried the knowledge that sometimes the coldest exteriors hide the deepest wounds. 3 months later, Lily and Marcus visited Victoria's office on a Saturday. Lily carried a drawing she'd made, a butterfly with rainbow wings. "Daddy said your little girl liked butterflies," she announced solemnly, handing it to Victoria. "I made this for her. For Emma." Victoria accepted it with trembling hands, and when she hugged Lily close, Marcus saw something he'd never thought he'd witness. Victoria Henderson, the Ice Queen of Henderson and Associates, finally allowing herself to heal. Sometimes the greatest battles aren't won with arguments or force, but with the simple courage to remain human in a world that demands we become machines. And sometimes, the people who seem hardest are simply those who've forgotten they're allowed to break.